All right, welcome to a special edition of Mojo Sessions. Has been here. This is a special series we're doing leading up to the National, the road to NSCC 23, if you will. We're talking to the movers and shakers in the industry, what they've got planned at the National, and very excited to start off with Andy Broome, VP over at Certified Collectibles Group. Of course, you know that name, you know CGC, CSG. They've had some big news in terms of what they're doing with grading. We'll get into that and much more. But Andy, how are we doing today?
I'm doing great, man. Thanks for having me on.
Of course. Yeah. We're thrilled to have you on. I think people who have been in this hobby for a while probably familiar with your name, what you've done with a long history in the hobby. But I always like to ask people as we start, just give us like a hobby history, your background, both as a collector, going all the way back to when you were a kid to what you've done in this industry.
Excuse me. Absolutely. So my first pack of cards was a 1983 Topps pack that my dad bought me at the gas station. And I thought it was cool, but, it wasn't until 86 when I got into full-time collecting, when I went crazy. Unlike a lot of collectors, my mom never had the chance to throw my cards out. I never stopped collecting, even going to school and everything. So I know that's kind of a weird thing in the hobby, it seems like. But
it's true.
But yeah. I've been a full-time collector since then. I got into the industry on the professional level around 1999. So I've been professionally grading cards now for going on 24, almost 25 years.
Wow, that's spectacular because it's there's so many new faces in this industry, and it's great to get back to the it's crazy to say 25 years is the roots now of the industry, which is kind of wild to say, but you're right. Like it could be, I guess, I think you would know better than me. It could be sometimes few and far between that you find who are who've been in this for a long haul and have that passion for all these years. I also looking up your background. I have to mention it because I've seen you've worked on stuff like Antiques Roadshow, Pawn Stars. I'm like a huge Antiques Roadshow junkie. I love that stuff. I want to know, in your time on sort of those show circuits, or just in general, your time in this hobby, because you've seen it all, I'm sure. It's and especially a lot of the vintage stuff, all that sort of stuff. But is there anything that has crossed your path that you had to take a step back and go, what is this? How did you find this? Anything does anything surprise you anymore?
You know what? Yeah, I still get surprised, which is really cool. We were actually joking about this the other day with one of my senior graders, and he's been in this for about 10 years. And he was joking. He was starting to feel like an old man in the industry. And I said, man, you got a long ways to go. But, we were joking and said, have we become jaded? Have we seen so many awesome cards over the years? What moves the needle? And for me, it's rarity. One example I'll give that I remember very clearly, an E104 Najee Caramel's card, Fred Tenney, complete common. The guy's, of course, he was actually decent in his day, but we've forgotten about him, right. Today. He's not Cobb or Wagner. But he did not have a card that we knew of in that set, the E104-3 set. And so 2018 won surfaces from St. Louis, which is where it should be, based on where they were issued. I was fortunate enough to get to grade that, bring it to market, catalog it. And then shortly after that, a second one appeared that was also graded, went on the market. And then just this past year, a third one arrived at CSG that I had the honor to grade. So it was a cool thing because this is, 110 plus year set. And now for the first time in the span of, 3 years, with this card appears, so wow. To me, that's really cool. I love that. What's the card worth? Not a great deal, but it's the story, the history behind it. Those are the kind of things that really still get me going.
Yeah, that's amazing. Guess what? It rains, it pours. That is fantastic. And again, it kind of goes to like, and this kind of plays into my next question. Like, what I think a lot of us got into this, as a kid. For me, I know it was just about the collecting aspect. It was about just getting my favorite players, all that sort of stuff, filling up whatever it is, my shoebox, a binder full of my favorite cards, organizing it by all-star team or whatever it may be. So that's what it's all about. And I do want to ask, because this last, now 3 years going on, where we have seen this massive boom in the hobby, things have, I guess, I would say it's settled quite a bit in the last year. And we've seen a lot of new people in this industry and a lot of changes, a lot of new, a lot of new money in this industry. So from your perspective, being in this now, as you said, professionally for 25 plus years, what do you, in your mind, the pros and maybe some of the cons of this industry growth that we've seen, something that we're definitely going to be seeing on display at this year's National in just a couple of weeks?
Yeah, when I look at where the hobby is right now today as compared to before the pandemic, compared to 2008 and so on, where we've had ups and downs, I think we're in a time right now where we can almost take the pandemic out of the equation now. And we're back to where we were before, but stronger. So what I'm saying is I think it's a really strong market out there. The cards, the blue chips, and even like vintage is a great place. We're just talking a little bit about some pre-war. Those are still setting records all the time. So the market is strong. And you kind of mentioned it that, during the pandemic, we saw a lot of people enter into the hobby that weren't in the hobby already. Now that means collectors getting started for the first time, which is very cool. On a side note, I've seen more kids in the last 3 years at shows than I ever have in my life, which is fantastic. But we also had people that entered into our industry that were, primarily flippers that really didn't have a hobby background. This is a quick way to make some money. And then we had the investors. We did have big money coming in, investing into the industry. And so, some of that has gone away. Obviously, we've seen that. We've seen the correction, especially like in the ultra modern stuff. We've seen those prices kind of correct. But, to me, in my mind, it really feels like we're just back to pre-pandemic, but stronger than that was. So, I think another encouraging thing too, right now, we're at this position to where we're seeing a lot more innovation in our industry. And I know AI is a huge buzzword. And, there is AI being used in the industry. We're using AI assistance with our grading, but, we have since day one. But there's a lot more than AI out there, right? And there's a lot of new innovation I know that we're looking at, and I know other leaders in the industry are looking at. And so I think that, right now is a really exciting time, because I don't want to say it's like a restart or reboot. I think that now we're at a point where finally past the pandemic. Now we can kind of get back to, okay, here's what the market is. It's strong. A lot of new people are still coming in. What can we do now? What are some more things we can do? What are new services we can offer? Those types of things.
Yeah, I love that sentiment, because it does feel like, like you said, there were a lot of people in here who maybe were, this may be me using my own words, but like kind of in it for the wrong reasons. And now that the dust is settled, you have people who they got into this, go, well, this is cool. I want to be part of this. And you're right. I think where it was 5-6 years ago to where we are now, yes, there was that crazy moment in the middle, but you have, I think, people who are even more passionate. And like you said, I think an injection of youth that is really exciting as well, that feels good about the future of this hobby. And speaking of that, exciting future right now for CCG. I want to get into what you guys are working on, what you guys have planned. We've heard the news about the change with the grading service, CSG CGC coming together, basically all under one umbrella. Can you tell us a little bit about more detail about exactly what collectors can expect from the change with the grading service?
Absolutely. What we did was we brought CGC trading cards and CSG sports cards together under one roof. Now, I say under one roof, we are already together. The reason why we were separate in the beginning was because our focus was having the proper expertise on that material, meaning, only people with trading card experience, Pokemon, Magic, The Gathering, and of course, Yu-Gi-Oh, those types of games, they only grade that material, right? They're not helping on sports cards, and then vice versa. The sports card team focuses on sports and then non-sports as well. So, which is great. That's what you want. One thing you want in a grading company, I want to know who the experts are, who's the expertise behind it. And then secondly, who's grading what? And so that's very important. But what we have found, and what I especially have found, is, there were hurdles that were preventing people from using our services. Like I foresaw, and like the rest of us foresaw at the company. And so we started looking at things and realizing we need to streamline. We need to be able to submit any type of card, sports card, trading card, non-sports, in one box, one submission form, one fee, and just streamline it across the board. And so that's really the result of that. And, about just over a year ago, We did a lot of research about our label for the CSG. And, after those focus groups and surveys that we did and market study, we went to the black label, which has been great. The reception has been fantastic. And so even at that time, we looked at what do we do? Do we combine things? How do we do it? And so, this bringing everything together, streamlining it, this has been over a year in the works. This isn't something that was like, oh, hey, let's do this for the national this year. It really got rolling with the new label. And over the course of the year, we heard from so many people about the black label and how, the neutrality of it, right? It doesn't take away from the card, which that's what we want. But, we have the clearest, best holder in the industry, and it doesn't take away from the card. Why would the label, right? We don't want the label to as well. And so that's what we found in the focus groups that we conducted and the surveys and just in general talking to dealers and also people that don't use our services. And that's what we came up with was the majority liked the black label, the neutrality of that. And so that's really what brought us to the announcement here. The recent announcement of the merger. It's to streamline everything for the customer because, I look at everything from a collector standpoint. I'm still a huge collector, and one of the things that my guys hear all the time and girls all the time, they're grading is, you as a collector, would you be happy with this card, this holder, this label in your collection? You get this in the mail, you open it up for your reveal. And so that's the way we look at it. And that's all has to do with, I just want to streamline it. I want to make it fun because grading is fun. And yes, there's people that make a living buying and selling grading cards, a lot of people. There's people that just do that for fun to fund their collection. And so the point is, it shouldn't be a hassle to send cards in to be graded. And that's really the focus of all what we've done here.
Yeah, well, that's great. I can tell you that just personally, when we were looking at these changes and looking at the new slabs, like it got us excited. It was like, it looks, it's a few months ago, I won't mention the grading company, but there was a lot of talk about a lot of changes being done with subgrades, weird things happening. And we all thought, man, this seems a little too confusing, especially for newer folks in this hobby. And it was great to see you guys take this, combine things here, say, you know what, let's combine these two strengths, let's get even stronger, and the slab itself, to me, that's what it all comes down to. It looks great, and like you said, I think it'll fit right into a collection. But I do want to address the sports cards collectors, because I think there is still a view among the hobby, certain folks in the hobby, I should say, that maybe that you guys are like, well, if I'm a sports card collector, I might go to some other companies that have more expertise, longer times doing sports cards. They're more, the trading cards and comics, all that stuff, which is great. But why, basically, what is your pitch to sports card collectors who maybe are still on the fence about making that switch over to you guys for grading?
Well, look, as a card grading service, we are still new to the scene, right? We're still 3 years into this. We're not, long card history. The Certified Collectibles Group as a whole, we've been grading collectibles since 1987. We are the world's largest collectibles grading company, and all combined for all the Certified Collectibles Groups. Verticals, we've graded over 75 million collectibles. So we have a deep history of expertise. One thing I always joke about is who just now announced his retirement, but Mark Salzberg, our chairman of the company, he's a world-renowned coin expert. And, the joke I'd always laugh is, if you're looking for Mark, he's in the grading room grading coins. Now, this is the chairman of the company. We don't depend on him to grade coins, but that's his passion. And so that's our passion from the top down. And so, every vertical that we start here at Certified Collectibles Group, we start with the best experts we can find in that field. And so cards are no different. And on the sports side, it's no different. It's hard to find, name a grader at any other grading service. And you want to know who is it behind all this? It's great to say we have AI and we have this and we have that, but you never see one mention of anybody that's grading, anybody's background in grading. And so that's the big difference with us. My expertise is one thing, but my other senior graders have experience in this industry as well. My lead modern senior finalizer, excuse me, he's been professionally grading for over 10 years in the industry. But, we have the training, because we can't just lean on one person's expertise or 5 people's expertise. Not, the big separator for us is the education part. Dr. Webb, I brag on him all the time. He's our director of education. He's the one that conducts our classroom training, not just when you're onboarded, but also ongoing training. I know the alterations and counterfeit detection is one of our modules that we do quite a bit. But I understand. When you may be new to the industry and you see all these other names that have come and gone already, and you don't know who's there for the long run. And with our financial backing and our expertise, and just our numbers, we're the number 2 in capacity, number 2 largest card grading service now. And so I think all these things combined, take it all into consideration and see where we're at. I think, what I'd like to ask everybody is at least give us a try, get a holder, get it in hand, take a look at it, and make your own decision on it. Because I know that, people will be surprised that think that maybe we're a fly by night or something like that. I think that once they start seeing the history that is here and the expertise, I think that you'll see that. And we've seen that already. We actually, on the sports side, we were the fastest grading company to grade 1 million cards, which I'm really proud of that. I think that's awesome. But there's still work to be done. We still have to get the word out there and let people see for themselves. We can talk till we're blue in the face, but you got to see the product. You've got to see the cards, the sales realized, things of that nature. And it's coming. But for anybody, that has a question about us, 2 things. Do some research, see what you find about us, but also contact us. Our customer service is in-house. They'll take your call and get you the right person. And if any questions, of course, at the National, we're going to be there again, grading on site. And I'll be there. Most of our team will be there to answer questions. So, the big thing for me is I want to be transparent and open and accessible. So that's if you have questions about us, please let me know.
Yeah, and I think you hit on it earlier that the big thing that, and I'll get into some of the this kind of boom in the grading with grading companies this last couple of years. But the thing that immediately stood out, when we're talking about it on our podcast was, oh, those are the guys that have done comics for years. They do all that. Like, oh, yeah, that's a trusted name. They know what they're doing. So I think that always was in the back of my mind of like, yeah, these guys, once it all comes together here with the grading, this is going to be, like you said, it's gonna where you guys are now, where it's second in volume, and it feels like, yeah, this is a real competitor for the biggest names here in this corner of the hobby. And speaking of that, it's a corner that's grown a lot over the last few years. Sometimes there are times where it's like I'm getting whiplash because I see so many new names. Like, whoa, what's this now? What's going on? How are you grading? I know Master P was doing one at one point. It's hard to keep up with how many grading services there are. So I want to know from you, like, how do you think that this space it became a little too crowded, and how do you guys try to stand out from the rest of the crowd?
Yeah, I think, and I'm just going by what, I see a lot of social media, the big 4 grading companies, this market's big enough. There's room for competition because competition is healthy, right? We don't want a monopoly of any company. And grading is just another aspect of that. Competition is, it pushes innovation. It pushes the customer service. It raises the bar. And so I think that the marketplace is very healthy with quote unquote big 4. A lot of these other companies have come and gone. That to me, it's not a big factor. That it's when you look at and dive into some of these, there's not a history there. There's not an expertise there. So, I think there's 4 big competitors in our industry, and I think there's room for us. I really do. I think the numbers show that. I think it's a matter of, as you said, how do you stand out as a company above your competition? For us, the big thing is technology and innovation. I think that's really what separates us, aside from just the expertise alone and things like the holder and things like that. But we're always trying to innovate. We're always growing, looking at the next thing, the next service that we can do. And it's a really cool thing when you have the ability and the backing to go, all right, what do you want to do next? one of the things I've talked about here recently is we have some more holder sizes coming out. We're going to keep expanding that. And that plays into our signature series that'll be coming soon for cards. And so I just don't want to ever stop because, like I said, I'm still a big collector. This is still fun for me, right? It should always be fun. And so it's fun for me too when I go, okay, what else cool things would I want to see? Like signature series, I know it's going to be awesome. It's huge in comics. Cards is going to be just as awesome. And I'm excited about that personally because I love autographs. I love getting cards signed. And so, is it selfish? Yeah, probably, but everybody benefits from that, right? Because I like it. It's cool. And so, but no, seriously, that's how we look at it is, we want to listen to the marketplace and innovate. I think that's really what makes us stand out.
Yeah, that hits the nail right on the head for me is like, how do you approach it? You go, well, what would I like? What do I think is cool? And you know what? Sometimes it might not work, but a lot of times it does. You realize, hey, what I think is cool is it's what other collectors would want, being a longtime collector. And yeah, I think there's also this, why I think there's a lot of excitement for what you guys are doing here is there is, I think, a larger crossover between the sports card world even and the trading card comics world where those interests are very shared. Like we just had some great Marvel sets where our whole, we have the biggest boxes of baseball, basketball, football come through here, and yet I saw more people crowding around watching us open a box of Marvel cards that we just had than I had ever seen. So there is, I think, this untapped potential where you're going to get a big crossover right there. You kind of mentioned briefly what you planned at the National. I think I heard on-site grading at the National. Is that correct? What else do you got planned?
Yeah. So we'll be in attendance again this year in the corporate area. We will be grading on site as we always have. When I say it's going to be a carnival at our booth, I literally mean that. It's going to be a carnival. We have a midway that's going to be set up and some really cool things to not only, interact with games and other things with cards, but the cool things for me is, on our stage, we'll have a stage in our booth and we'll be doing things like Meet the Grader, where I and other members from a grading team will be there to take a look at some cards, talk about them. You got questions, want to know maybe what would this grade, things like that. That's the time to come by and see. And talk to us. And we're going to have some other programming that I'm not going to say yet, but we're going to have some big programming going on at our booth. And, the big thing too is interactions with the kids. We're doing a junior grader program with kids. That's going to be really cool. And so, the whole point is engagement. Come by, even if you're not submitting cards for on-site or for take-back, stop by and see what else we've got going on. I think it's going to be really cool. It's definitely going to be the biggest national for us. And the most we've gone out, like I said, with the carnival. I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
I love it. That sounds really exciting. And I love that you guys are like they Meet the Grader, that it's all about that push for transparency, which I think is so huge in especially the grading circles. Cause I think we've mentioned it on our show. Sometimes it feels like it's all of the people who are grading in certain companies. It's like the end of Raiders of the Lost Ark. It's like, oh, we've got our top men on it. Who, you're top men. Don't worry about it. But it can feel like that sometimes. So it's great to see, putting the face to the grader. And I think too, that there's a lot of folks who are unfairly like, oh, they all have these conspiracies of what's going on. And I think that, like you said, doing that, putting a face to what you guys are doing, it goes such a long way for that trust and, that brand recognition that I think is really important. Just a couple more questions for you, Andy, before I let you go. Just personally, the National, it's such an exciting event. I did it for the first time last year and it blew me away. Just the size and the scale and everything under the sun that you could find in the card and collectibles world. So I just want to know, for you personally, are you on the lookout for anything at the National? Is there anything that's always on your checklist, or is there anything maybe specifically this year that you're keeping an eye out for?
Well, first I'm going to say I've learned this lesson already, that I have to be careful when I say things like that about what I'm looking for.
That's true. Yeah, you don't want to let it out and then somebody else went, all right, writing that down. Now I know what to look for.
But yes, there's always things I'm looking for. Each year there may be a few specific things, but there's some long-standing old-time list that I'm looking for. But I'll tell you what's really cool. I don't give very much time at all to shop the National, unfortunately. Maybe one day when I retire. But when I do get to go out, the great thing is, have a list. Only go after what you're going after. Throw all that out the door, man. You got to just go sometimes and just see what catches your eye, because I have a list and I know what I'm looking for, but every single national, it's like, I never expected to see this. So I love it. One of the things I love is vintage Japanese. So it seems like the national is a good place where I get get to add a few really cool cards to my collection each year. So that's one thing that's usually a go-to for me.
Nice. No, that's really cool. Yeah, I don't know if I've seen a lot of that hanging around. I definitely now I'm going to be on the lookout. Yeah, you're right. Maybe you shouldn't have let it out the cat out the bag. And a couple more here. Any tips for first timers? You kind of mentioned it. Sounds like be open, keep your mind open. Sounds like a good tip if you're a first timer. And of course, this is in Chicago, so maybe if you got any tips for anyone who's coming for the first time and what you can expect from the show at Rosemont this year.
Well, I will say that in the current rotation of cities for the National, Rosemont, Chicago area, I think it's the best. I think it's the best crowd. I think you see the best material there. It's just Chicago area. It's just a great central location for a National. What I would say for people going to their first National, it is going to be overwhelming. So take it slow. If you're there for only a day, you're not going to see it all, and that's okay. Pace yourself, take breaks, wear comfortable shoes is a very big one. You hear everyone say cash is king, and that is true. But most dealers, I'm trying to think if I've even seen a dealer that I've bought something from the last couple of years. Most dealers are taking whether it's card or some other type of payment now. So, there's always a little concern about if you're carrying, too much cash, something like that. But don't worry about it. Most dealers are going to be able to take other forms of payment. I always carry around a couple of snacks in my pocket because it's just such a lot of walking. But number one rule, and this applies more to Comic Cons in my experience, the card shows are the same. Please, everyone, wear deodorant and bathe, because it's going to be very packed in there. We're going to be very close together. Do everyone a favor. But in all seriousness, though, just pace yourselves and just try to take it all in. And, when it's time for a break, go to the corporate areas, even if you're not doing business over there, because a lot of the big corporations, they'll have a lot of interactive stuff to do and see. And it's a great place to take a break, open a box, or, just hang out for a little bit before you take off again. And then lastly, I'll say, is when you're looking at a dealer's booth and you see something you like and you say, I'll come back, get the dealer's booth number, put it in your phone, write it on your hand, because you will not remember where it is. I promise.
Yeah, great tips. And having done multiple San Diego Comic-Cons, yes, cleanliness is key, 100%. Andy, hey, I'll leave you with this. Out the door, give us your elevator pitch. Why should collectors choose CGC over the competition?
We're the number one grading service of collectibles in the world, and CGC cards is no different.
There you go. Andy Broome, he's the you can find him CGC or CCG. Where else can we find you, Andy, on the internet?
CGCcards.com, social media, CGC Cards, and I'm on Twitter. The handle is CardGrader.
There you go. And, of course, check them out at the National. Andy, thank you so much for joining me. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, man. Thank you so much for having me on.